John Gibson to take you through the next hour. Hey, John.
All right, Neil, thank you. Of course, the big story today, how can you ignore it? What's going on in Argentina? I am John Gibson. This is the big story. As you can see, this is a Fox News alert. More than 1,000 anti-American protesters and police are clashing at the summit of the Americas, where President Bush and world leaders are meeting in Argentina. White House correspondent Wendell Goler is traveling with the president. He will join us momentarily to talk about what is going on down there. Do we have Wendell yet? Not yet. All right, Wendell will be here in just a second. This has been going on all day. Wendell Goler can fill us in now. Wendell, give us your perspective on this traveling with the president.
John, can you hear me?
All right, Wendell Goler is, I think I heard his voice. Wendell, can you hear me?
John, I hear you fine. The violence here coincided with the official start of the summit. Protests fueled by the president's open trade policies, which some people in Argentina see as the cause of this country's economic collapse in the 1990s, and anger at the highly unpopular war in Iraq. Now, the pictures we're going to show you are dramatic, but the drama mainly for our benefit. The violence took place well away from the summit talks, and if the president saw anything, he saw it on television. A bank was burned, at least one shop looted, police pelted with rocks and fireworks, and they responded with tear gas. This town of 500,000 had been virtually closed for the summit. Roads shut down, barricaded, businesses boarded up in anticipation of the violence. Earlier, an entirely peaceful demonstration drew 10,000 people, many of them carrying signs reading "Fuera Bush" or "Get Out Bush." They were led by Argentine soccer star Diego Maradona and Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. After Fidel Castro, he is the Latin American leader the Bush administration most loves to hate. Chavez returned the favor by promising to bury the president's dream of a hemisphere-wide free trade zone. He says he looks forward to a face-to-face meeting in the summit talks with the man he calls Mr. Danger. The problem for President Bush in this gathering of 34 leaders is that Chavez is getting a following. Half of Latin America's governments have changed parties, if you will, or at least changed hands since President Bush was elected in 2001. Half of those changes have resulted in leftist governments. Chavez is sitting on a sea of oil, making deals with China and other countries that are making U.S. officials nervous. President Bush says open trade is the only way, the only prescription for Latin America's chronic poverty. Officials, that is officially, by the way, the theme of this summit, building jobs, but without unanimous agreement on a fair trade agreement for the Americas. Officials, U.S. officials here are having to highlight the fact that maybe 28 of the 34 leaders here support the free trade agreement. They say that's a good start. John?
Wendell Goler. Wendell, thank you. Wendell traveling with the president. Meanwhile, Fox cameraman Brian Cole is out on the streets watching all of this. Brian, we get a picture of rampant violence sweeping the streets of this city. Is it as widespread as it looks?
John, it was in the beginning, and it started off as a peaceful march from the soccer stadium to the area that was deemed the confrontation area. And I think what happened was that this was planned, and they, as I said before, they came in sort of waves. Once the peaceful demonstration ended, the anarchists, as I call them, came up and started throwing rocks and other kind of flammable liquids and starting fires, and then the police eventually responded with tear gas, and that's when the chaos started to happen. As the police continued with their tear gas, it eventually pushed the crowd back, but then again the waves of anarchists came back with more ammunition, if you want to call it, to confront the police.
You know, Brian, looking at the pictures that you and others have shot, I see Argentine press photographers out there with their cameras already prepared with gas masks. It seems to indicate that this is not a spontaneous eruption of violence, but something that was planned. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, when we got there, it was obviously planned because there were satellite trucks set up. There were cameramen on balconies. There were live cameras there, too, cabled to their satellite trucks. So I think this was very well organized and choreographed.
How many people does it involve? I mean, it's hard to tell from pictures, close-up pictures, but how big are the crowds that are engaging in this violence?
I think, as you said before, I think it was close to at least 1,000. There were a lot of people. They came down a fairly large street, a two-way, 4-lane street, and the traffic was blocked off. There were never any problems with traffic, but they came down and they stopped at the designated point. They did their chants. They burned American flags. They burned some kind of a missile structure to signify the United States policy, defense policy, and so it was well organized. But then the people that wanted to make trouble, they were there and they started it, and it just got a little crazy. And I felt, I mean, the fires that were started also were just, that was just sad to see.
Brian, before I let you go, just one last thing. Are you recognized as an American on the street? Do you feel this hostility directed to you? Do you feel that you've been in danger?
No. And we made sure that we had nothing that signified any kind of identification. We kept our passes tucked in, but most of the journalists did too. Obviously, we didn't. I don't speak Spanish, but we communicated, and the protesters never ever really threatened us in any way, because as all members of the media, I guess there is this sort of universal trust or some kind of acceptance that we're there to cover what they're doing.
All right, Brian Cole, a Fox photographer on the scene. Let me go now to my Fox colleague, anchor and reporter David Asman, who spent many, many years in this area. David, perhaps you can tell us why this is happening.
Well, first of all, I spent 12 years. You're making me feel pretty old there, John, but the point is...
It's a long time, David.
It started, my experience there started in the 80s when we had all the problems in Central America. Remember Nicaragua, the Sandinistas and Salvadorans and so forth? Well, those wars were finished, partly because of the fact that Ronald Reagan put a lot of money and a lot of effort into wiping out the communists in Central America, whether it was the Sandinistas in Nicaragua, which was dispatched by the Contras, or whether it was the revolutionaries in Salvador trying to take over that country. And of course, we supported democracy there, and eventually they get out. So then you had the 90s, which was a period of growth in reaction to getting the communists out of the henhouse. But then you had this period of stagnation because a lot of crooks, very much like what's happening in Russia. You know what happened there? We got rid of communism, well, or they got rid of communism, whoever you want to give credit, doesn't matter. But we had this initial period of great growth and expectations. And what happened now? The crooks came in. Without establishing a clear rule of law, the crooks came in and took all the goodies that the government used to have for itself. That's what privatization, in quotes, was all about. And the same thing happened in Latin America. A lot of crooks got a lot of the industries that used to belong to the state.
Yeah, but let's connect the dots, David. Why does anybody blame George Bush for that?
Because you have to have somebody to blame, and the people that are in power now don't want to blame themselves. They blame the past guys who were crooks. They locked up some of those crooks. That was fine. But the policies that these guys advocate, particularly in Argentina, where you have a left-leaning government, and certainly in other places which are farther to the left, you have policies that aren't working too well, so the people are too poor. So what do? You blame the United States. You blame the rich people. It's an easy thing to do.
David, the other thing is, as you know, one of the other conferees at this summit is Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. And Mr. Chavez is publicly baits President Bush whenever he gets a chance, including today. Mm-hmm. So what are the chances that part of what we're seeing is a direct result of Chavez speaking to these protesters today?
Well, it might be even more than that, John. I don't have any evidence to back up what I'm about to say, but I do have evidence that he has empowered with cash radical elements in other parts of Central and South America, in particular in El Salvador, in particular in Nicaragua, where there's an election coming up and the Sandinistas might get back in because they're getting so much money from Chavez, or in Bolivia, where a president was pushed out of power because Chavez empowered financially the opposition. he's been empowering a lot of the radicals, sometimes in electoral battles, but sometimes underhandedly in other ways. Colombia is at war, essentially. It's not a declared war, but with Venezuela, because Venezuela has been funding some of the guerrillas that have been killing Colombians, the Colombian guerrillas, killing Colombians for years. Thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in Colombia over the past couple of decades. Now Venezuela is paying these people. So some of what you're seeing here, I don't know who's under the masks of those people that are throwing Molotov cocktails, but some of them might actually be people that have been on the receiving end of Chavez's largesse.
You know, David, a lot of people are wondering why Bush went to this summit. He has plenty on his plate here. Are the scenes that we are seeing now, should they have been anticipated by anybody planning this trip for the president?
I think some of them were anticipated. As I was telling Neil Cavuto earlier, a lot of these buildings have been boarded up for days. The people in Mar del Plata knew what was coming, and if we had any advancement, let's hope we still have advancement to go to places where the president is about to go. They clearly saw that the preparations were being made, like at any international meeting where these radicals come in and start burning things. I mean, clearly they knew some of this was going to go on. If they knew the extent of it, that I don't know. But part of it is because the Bush administration for the past 3 years has been so focused on the Middle East after 9/11 that they kind of lost sight of what's happening south of the border. Maybe they didn't anticipate the depth to which a lot of the dissatisfaction with their own governments has been deflected towards the United States.
So when you say dissatisfaction with their own governments, particularly there in Argentina, how has the average person's life been diminished by the crooks in privatization or these trade agreements that evidently have hurt the local economy?
Well, no, the trade agreements haven't been put in power. In fact, that's what what Bush wants to do in South America is what he's done in Mexico and Central America, in which you now have these free trade zones. He wants to extend that down to South America, and of course that would take power away from Hugo Chavez. He has his own little trade plan that he wants to get cooking, and a lot of it, he's bribing a lot of people into coming on his side because he's got all this oil wealth. A lot of what's going on has to be understood in context of Hugo Chavez, because this guy has more money than Midas right now. He's got 13% of all of our imported oil comes from Venezuela, comes from Chavez. That's the irony of the whole thing. Our biggest enemy is one of our biggest oil suppliers. So he's got all this cash. I mean, what? The price of oil has doubled in the past year or so, and that's gone right into the coffers of Chavez to spend where he wants to spend. And he's spending a lot of money convincing Latin Americans that they are poor because we are rich.
David Asman, don't go too far. I'll come back to you in a minute. Let me just reset and tell everybody what we're looking at. This is called Mar del Plata, the town, the beachfront town in Argentina, where this summit of the Americas is underway. President Bush is in attendance, and a lot of Latin American leaders. Joining us on the phone now is Roger Noriega, former Assistant Secretary of State for this area. Mr. Noriega, can give us some perspective on this and why we're seeing what we're seeing?
Well, we're seeing this because the thugs in the street there want to capture attention for their own destructive agenda and distract leaders away from the reform agenda that's needed to empower the poor. It's the ultimate irony that George Bush's reform agenda, which he's advocating at this summit meeting, is all about empowering poor people. It's all about taking political and economic power from those that have it and giving it to those who don't. And the elites are not in favor of that, and these criminal elements that masquerade as having some sort of political agenda aren't in favor of that either. So the ultimate irony of all of this violence is that it deviates attention away from the hard work of opening up these economies and modernizing these economies and extending political power to the poor.
What is it the organizers of these kinds of violent protests, and I assume they are organized because everybody came ready for a riot, what is it they gain?
Well, they get the attention of the international media and therefore the world. They are trying to derail any progress on modernizing economies because, and this is a political agenda as well. This is not about whether or not poor people are helped or hurt by trade agreements. It's a political agenda. It's a left-wing agenda, anti-American by all means, anti-Bush in particular. But there are people who are frustrated with the progress on reducing poverty through free trade and are frustrated with representative democracy. And those are the people that aren't on the camera right now. Those are, there are thousands of people who are probably peacefully protesting, civil society, letting their views be known, explaining the downsides of the reform agenda. And they don't get this attention because they're not thugs lighting buildings on fire.
Roger Noriega, former Assistant Secretary of State. Mr. Noriega, thanks very much for your perspective. Let me go now on the phone to Lawrence Eagleburger, the former Secretary of State, who is a frequent guest on this show. Mr. Eagleburger, thank you. Just your reaction to what you're seeing.
Well, I wish I could say something different than those that you've just had on, but I just, one, you can't play this down too much. I will admit there's something to it, but at the same time, it's ever been thus when an American president has gone out and around, particularly when the U.S. may be somewhat unpopular, and this one is no exception, I think. And I must also say, if your report is correct that it's only 1,000 or so people, that's peanuts. It may look terrible, but unless it's a lot more than 1,000 people, it isn't even a very well-organized demonstration, and organized it is. And there are enough people in Latin America in general and in Argentina in particular that you can get them out on the streets for anything. And certainly when it's anti-U.S., you can get them out for that. And 90% of this problem, not 100, let's say 80% of this problem, is because the governments in these countries themselves have not been able to do what any sensible government ought to be able to do, which is bring some peace and prosperity to its citizens. And one of your earlier commentators mentioned the crooks came in, and that's been the case too often. And they can blame it on the U.S. That's always convenient. But by and large, these are problems created by their own inefficiencies. And we have to pay attention to people who are down and out and poor, but at the same time, we don't have to accept all the blame on ourselves,
Mr. Eagleburger, those of us who remember images from black and white television 50 years ago, remember Nixon going to South America and rioting, engulfing his motorcade and so forth, and the American people were shocked about that at the time. Now, we've gotten to the point where we're a little less shocked than we used to be, but my guess is most Americans looking at this are saying, what's this all about?
Yeah, I think they do. I think, look, I can tell I was involved in a riot in Berlin when it was still a divided city, and the Soviets were on all sides of it, and I sat there and wondered what in the world they were demonstrating against us for, since if we left, they weren't going to be in a free city at all. Sometimes it is totally illogical. And I'm not saying that this one is totally illogical, but from what I can see at least, it is by and large the sorts of people you would see that could be gathered in any one of these riots. And I think most of the American people have to understand, number one, this is a small number of people, I gather, in terms of what a real riot would be like, or what it's like in Paris right now. But beyond that, you can recruit people like this anywhere in Latin America for an anti-U.S. demonstration anytime you want, and by and large it's because we're the haves and they're the have-nots, and that is maybe unfortunate for them, but at the same time, I refuse to accept that the United States is fundamentally at blame for any of the agonies they may be going through. It's their own fault.
All right. Former Secretary of State Lawrence Eagleburger. Mr. Eagleburger, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and we'll check back in with you. Let me just remind people what we are seeing. This is demonstrators at the Summit of the Americas in Argentina, where President Bush is meeting with Latin American leaders about a new trade agreement. This protest started off as a peaceful protest involving about 10,000 people, but 1,000 violent protesters broke off and have been breaking windows and burning businesses and throwing Molotov cocktails for a few hours now. 1,000 of these demonstrators were well prepared for this riot. They came with their own riot gear, their own gas masks, and fully prepared to go at it. And as you see, they have. We're going to keep an eye on this as we continue with the program and let you know what's going on down there in Mar del Plata, Argentina. But as you can see, the protesters are running amok and destroying a lot of property. I'm joined now by Loretta Napoleoni, who is the author of Insurgent Iraq, al-Zarqawi and the New Generation. And Ms. Napoleoni has written a book about Zarqawi and his relationship with al-Qaeda, another important issue for Americans as we continue to follow the war in Iraq. Ms. Napoleoni, I believe you say in your book that Zarqawi and al-Qaeda were created by the Iraq War, that they didn't exist together before. I thought that Ansar al-Islam, where Zarqawi was based, was established in Iraq well before we invaded.
Al-Zarqawi was never a member of Ansar al-Islam. In fact, Ansar al-Islam was created in northern Iraq in 2000, middle 2000, end of 2000. So he was never really part of it, nor was he part of Al-Qaeda. He was an individual which had a very small group of followers, and he was backed by the Taliban, and he ran a small camp in Herat, near the border with Iran, between Afghanistan and Iran. He had nothing to do with Al-Qaeda.
Well, it certainly does now, right?
Yes, of course. Today is the representative of Al-Qaeda in Iraq. He is the emir, the prince in Iraq.
Well, so your point is what exactly? That we created Zarqawi by this Iraq invasion?
Well, what happened was that the Kurdish Secret Service, together with the Jordanian authorities, they presented al-Zarqawi as a member of Al-Qaeda to the Americans. And the Americans believed, they actually, look at the information and consider al-Zarqawi being the link between Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein. In reality, al-Zarqawi was not he did not have such a role. But this particular situation, they're presenting him as the new leader, the new operational leader of the jihadist movement, allowed him to attract not only people that join his insurgency, but also funds. All of a sudden, money from the Gulf started arriving to Iraq to fund his group.
Yeah, but I'm trying to understand your point exactly. Is that we have created Zarqawi and that he would not have sprung up, he would not have been doing these things had there not been an Iraq war?
Yes, what I'm saying is that until the 5th of February 2003, nobody had ever heard of al-Zarqawi. And this is not only in the Western world, but also in the Muslim world. All of a sudden, people were presented, especially within the Muslim world, with the new icon, with the new individual, which was projected as the leader of the insurgency, the future insurgency, but also the jihadist movement. And because of that, he attracted a lot of funds, but also a lot of support.
All right. Loretta Napoleoni, author of Insurgent Iraq, al-Zarqawi and the New Generation. Ms. Napoleoni, thank you very much. Meantime, parents in this country are outraged after a California school district surveys elementary school children about sex. And now the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, this is the famous Ninth Circuit, has rejected the parents' claim that they, parents, have the exclusive right to tell their kids about sex. And that decision drawing fire from Capitol Hill.
Parents should beware. Not only will they lose the right to choose what lessons their children will learn, but it will not be long before they will not even be allowed to know what is being taught.
But can public schools really teach whatever they want to whomever they want? Fox News senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano joins us now. So this is a decision today, Judge, that was authored by a guy we talk a lot about, Justice Stephen Reinhart, the most liberal of the liberal court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal, married to Ramona Ripston, the head of the ACLU in Southern California. Why should this surprise us that Judge Reinhart issued this kind of decision?
John, this is over the top even for Judge Reinhart. I suppose knowing him and knowing the court, it shouldn't surprise us. But the notion that a federal court would attempt to say to parents, schools know better than you do, and schools have a higher and more protected right than you do to raise your children in matters as personal and important as sex, is just not something that the American public is accustomed to understanding. To make matters
what is he really saying? I don't quite understand this.
Well, here's the background. The school sent a questionnaire to the parents saying, we're going to ask your children these questions. Do you approve? Almost all the parents approved. Thereafter, the school modified the questionnaire and added 15 questions about sex, extremely intimate questions like, do you think about sex? Do you think about sex with Johnny or Susie? Do you think about your private parts? Do you want to wash yourself when you come home from school because your insides are dirty? Now, John, these questions were put to 5-year-olds, and the parents did not know that the questions were being asked. When they heard about it from their children, they protested. The school wouldn't stop, so they sued. A federal trial judge, federal district court judge in Los Angeles, sided with the school board, and that decision was yesterday upheld by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
But what was the reasoning? Why would the school assert a right to ask these questions in the first place? What were they trying to get at?
The school is trying to prepare. No one's going to accept this, but this is what it has been claimed. 5-year-olds to confront the reality of sexuality in the world. And the school argued before the federal courts, the trial court and the appellate court, A, that it knows more about this than the parents do, and B, it cannot accommodate, quote, the idiosyncrasies of every parent, closed quote, in order to teach sex the way the parents want it taught to their individual children. Thus, they claim the right, and the court upheld it, to ask these intimate questions and to compel the children to answer and then to act on those answers.
So has Judge Reinhart gotten the last word on this, Judge?
Well, I hope not. Here's what's interesting. While the case was pending before Judge Reinhart and his two fellow judges on the Ninth Circuit, the school stopped asking the questions, so the program doesn't occur anymore. But all the school districts in the western United States, west of your home state of Texas, are now told, hey, you can go ahead and do it. This will clearly make its way to the Supreme Court of the United States. Guess what? An opposite result when it comes to Washington, John.
Yeah, probably will. Judge Andrew Napolitano, Judge, thank you very much. Fox News Alert, as you can see, this is fairly recent tape coming out of Mar del Plata, Argentina. This is where the Summit of the Americas is taking place. President Bush and other Latin American leaders meeting, talking about trade agreements which are supposed to improve the economies of Latin American, South American countries. About 1,000 Argentine rioters have taken over what was an otherwise peaceful demonstration of 10,000 or so, and are burning shops and breaking windows, and you wouldn't call it looting, they're just destroying property. And as you can see from some of these pictures, evidently the press there certainly knew this was coming, because you see press photographers all prepared with gas masks and ready to cover what is clearly a riot, an anti-American riot in Argentina. It is some distance away from the actual summit. This is not something that President Bush and the other summiteers are having to look at. Nonetheless, it is in proximity, and it is going on. And there you just saw a photographer walking by in gas masks. So evidently they knew this was coming. They planned it. and they took it over. Let me go now to Times of London U.S. Bureau Chief Jerry Baker, who's a frequent guest on this program and an expert in many things that we see going on the TV screen. Jerry Baker, this is the kind of riot, anti-American riot we've seen just before, in the run-up to the war in Europe. What distinguishes this one in your mind?
Well, you know, I can't help looking at these pictures and feeling that there's a kind of double irony here. You referenced it when you talked about, you know, the point of this summit and the aim of the United States and most of the governments in the region actually is to promote free trade. Free trade, the opening of markets, has been the most positive thing that has happened anywhere in the world, economically, quite frankly, in the last 25 years. It has massively improved everybody's standard of living. It's massively increased prosperity. And what the world is trying to do, what the world's leaders are trying to do, is to get that free trade advanced and furthered. And you've got people here who are very poor and who are not benefiting at the moment in free trade, who are opposing this, who are actually opposing a policy and opposing a set of leaders who are trying to improve prosperity. The other irony that strikes me is that, frankly, 25 years ago, most of Latin America, most of South America was in the grip of dictatorships. It was run by fascist and communist, some communist dictatorships. Now, fortunately, there's only one dictatorship in the entire region, which is Cuba. And it's ironic that these people who've been liberated, thanks to a whole range of things that have gone on in the region for the last 25 years, they now have freedom, and they're choosing to use that freedom by protesting against the governments that are actually, you know, that actually represent free democracies. And it's kind of ironic, but you do have these extremists, these anarchists, these communists who are demonstrating like this. And it's, as I say, I think it's just ironic that they are there doing this while they are benefiting from the very things that they're protesting against.
These are probably what you would call photo radicals staging this riot for the cameras. And I have information now that it's kind of over and they're already cleaning up. We're looking at tape of some time ago. But what is this all about? Is it really a protest over the trade agreements, or is this anti-Bush, anti-Iraq war tantrum going on in the streets of Argentina?
Well, the real answer, I suspect, I don't know, I've not been there, but I suspect it's the same crowd, frankly, of violent, anti-democracy, anti-freedom protesters who get out around the world whenever there's a major summit, but certainly whenever President Bush is involved. We've seen it in Europe, we've seen it in Asia, we've seen it in, we've even seen it in the United States. You may recall the Seattle WTO meeting way back 6 years ago, when you had, you know, these people who are essentially out for a riot and out for trouble, out for a fight, and out to cause as much difficulty as they can. Now, the pretext that they've got in this case is that President Bush is there. They're protesting against the Iraq war, but they're also protesting, as I said earlier, against free trade. They believe that free trade is not going to benefit them, when all the evidence suggests that free trade is what benefits them. And it's really a political protest, and they take the opportunity. You said very, you know, quite rightly, that there are photographers there. Everybody knew this was going to happen. They've got maximum publicity, and they're doing it again. I don't think they represent most people in the region. They don't even, I mean, sure, President Bush is not popular in that region. I'm not going to pretend he is. But I think that their methods, what they're doing, is not supported very widely anywhere in the world.
Jerry, last question. If Bush wasn't there, would these riots have gone on?
I don't think you'd have seen the intensity. I mean, that's the point. People come out, they take an opportunity. It was very much the case. I remember in Europe, I was there last year, in Italy when President Bush was there. People come out and they take the opportunity, because President Bush is unpopular, they use that as a pretext. But these people would demonstrate and do demonstrate and protest all the time. So I don't think there would be the level of intensity that you'd see. But certainly in terms of a summit which is trying to improve free trade and promote democracy in the region, you'd always see this kind of demonstration, this kind of backlash against that.
Gerard Baker, U.S. editor, Times of London. Jerry, it's always good to talk to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It is now time for my word. As you will hear later, a huge amount of objection from Bush haters about my explanation of the logic in their Bush lied mantra. We're talking about the war, of course. The Democrats are crazed to make the Bush lied charge stick, because they see an opportunity to make up for the Kerry loss by a big win in the midterm elections, a chance to sweep the Republicans out and put Dems in. Yesterday I said the flaw in the Bush lied logic is that when you follow that line of thinking, this is what you get. Bush lied means the war was wrong, which means Saddam should never have been deposed, which means Saddam should be put back in power. Yes? So I get all these outraged letters saying, John, you're so dumb, nobody wants Saddam back in power, but Bush lied. Okay, but the war was what removed Saddam from power. It wasn't going to happen any other way. Bush launched the war to put him out of power. If Bush had not launched the war, Saddam would still be in power. You cannot have Saddam out without endorsing Bush's war. If you oppose Bush's war, if you say it never should have happened, you are saying you would prefer we roll back the clock pre-March 19th, 2003, and Saddam is happily running Iraq and torturing whoever he wants. I also said we can make this happen today. All we have to do is open the jailhouse doors. The Sunnis will rush to pick Saddam up, returning him to Tikrit, and then we'll see what a real insurgency looks like. Of course, the Dems don't want that. They like it that Saddam is in jail, out of power, but they also like to bash Bush. No WMDs found equals Bush lied. It also means that all those Democrat politicians who said the same thing also lied, but no, they were just an error because Bush lied to them. That's how the thinking goes. Face it, this is about putting the war on trial for the purpose of winning the next round of elections. Has nothing to do with the war itself, really. Next time someone says to you Bush lied, you should say, okay, I presume you want Saddam sprung from jail and put back in charge of Iraq, because that is what it means, unless, of course, you're a Democrat consumed with hate for Bush and his supporters. That is my word. Write to me at myword@foxnews.com. Time now to head over to Gretchen Carlson for the rest of today's headlines. Hi, Gretchen.
Hey, John. Howard Dean's most sensitive documents from his time as Vermont governor will remain under wraps, at least for a while. The state's highest court approving Dean's decision to keep the papers sealed until 2013. The documents became a focus of Dean's run for the presidency last year when opponents called on him to open the files. An Oregon judge upholding the state's ban now on same-sex marriage. Gay rights supporters argued the vote that enacted the ban was flawed, but the judge disagreed. Last year, one Oregon county began handing out marriage licenses to same-sex couples. A judge put a stop to that, and voters passed the ban just months later. A daring river rescue in Washington state. Emergency workers say the driver of an SUV apparently suffered a medical problem and swerved into this water that you see there. Cops had to get into a boat to save him just in time. The water was up to his window when they got there. The driver is said to be doing fine. Wow, what a lucky break there. That's a look at some of the other stories making headlines at this hour. Now we send you back to the big story with John Gibson.
All right, Gretchen, thank you. 56,000 unemployed Americans found jobs last month, according to new Labor Department data, but the figure falls short of what economists were expecting. It's a sign the job market is recovering from Hurricane Katrina, but still has a way to go. Join us now to talk about the state of our economy, Commerce Secretary Carlos Gutierrez. Mr. Gutierrez, thanks very much. So what are we supposed to make of this, these signs in the economy? Is this a Katrina bump or something a little more ominous?
Well, it's 56,000 new payroll jobs. Obviously, we would always like to see more. And as the president said, we're not going to stop until every American who wants to work is working. But, you know, our unemployment is 5%. That's below the average of the past 3 decades. These numbers come on top of a GDP growth of 3.8% in the last quarter. If you just think about that, John, that's the quarter where we had the devastation from Katrina and from Rita, and there were so many predictions about our growth slowing down. That's 3.8% during that very critical third quarter. That's actually above the 12-month rolling average of 3.6%. It's the 10th consecutive quarter of growth above the rate of 3%. So we've got something very strong here. Our economy is very strong. It shows that the president's policies are working and that they're delivering results, and we should be very proud of that.
All right, but we were getting job growth, at least just around the election, of twice that, 3 times that, 4 times that, I think 1 month, 5 times that. So this looks pretty anemic.
Well, again, you know, you're talking about one period of time. I think you have to step back and look at a longer period of time. We've created 1.9 million jobs over the past 12 months. And I think that's what counts. And the 53 or 56,000 additional jobs contributes to an unemployment rate that is 5%. That 5% is below the average of the past 3 decades. So, you know, we need to step back and look at these numbers in the context of the bigger picture. And we have a very strong economy. And everywhere you look, you can see signs of that.
Carlos Gutierrez, the Commerce Secretary. Mr. Secretary, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, John.
And for the latest on the economy and other top business stories, don't forget to tune in to the Fox News channel this weekend for The Cost of Freedom. As always, it starts Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, and that's the all-star lineup you see on the screen. Celebrities, politicians, everyday folks attacking the right with everything from movies to the media to pies, but are liberals going too far? What do you think Michelle Malkin thinks about all that? We will ask her after this.
The nation's top critics are applauding Shop Girl. Ebert and Roper give it 2 thumbs up. You look like an angel. It's Steve Martin's finest performance, and Claire Danes will be hard to beat at Oscar time. Shop Girl, rated R. Now playing at a theater near you.
Technology has made your morning easier. Why not your shave? The new Philips Norelco Smart Touch XL is designed to shave more, with 3 shaving rings in each shaving head. And it stays on your neck, so even tricky hairs are cut. Make every stroke count.
When you're a star like me, things are taken care of. You see? A second bag. Second. Even my independent insurance agent spoils me.
Ryan, after comparing a number of companies, I recommend Drive Insurance from Progressive. You'll get a policy customized just for you.
How does the other half live?
Actually, I do it for everyone.
To find an agent who'll take care of you, go to driveinsurance.com.
New from Usher, only at Best Buy. Get the Usher Truth Tour limited edition DVD box set, available November 8th, exclusively at Best Buy.
As Team Mom, my mom always watches what we eat and encourages us to eat our Campbell's Chunky Soup. Like new Chunky Fajita Steak.
Eat up those big chunks of steak.
She's also very encouraging from the sidelines.
Whatever you're feeding, don't stop. New Campbell's Chunky Fajita Soups fill you up right.
If you've had a heart attack, the reduced how well your heart pumps, hear this. Your heart medications may not be enough protection. Coreg is FDA approved to increase your chance of survival when taken over time. Adding Coreg to your current treatment can help prevent another heart attack. Coreg reduces your heart's workload to help it pump better. That should be music to your ears.
Coreg is not for everyone, including people prone to asthma, heart rhythm problems, slow heart rate, or liver problems. Once you start Coreg, you should continue as directed by your doctor. Patients who abruptly stop may experience chest pain or an increased risk of heart attack. In some cases, patients may experience dizziness or faintness when starting Coreg. You should avoid driving or hazardous tasks if this occurs.
See your doctor to find out if Coreg is right for you. Help protect your heart with Coreg.
News follows the president wherever he goes. A recap for you on what's been happening in Argentina, where President Bush is right now. More than 1,000 anti-American protesters and police clashing at the Summit of the Americas. White House correspondent Wendell Goller traveling with the president. He joins us live in Mar del Plata. Hello, Wendell.
John, we continue to get these pictures of clashes between police and protesters in Mar del Plata. The incidents taking place well away from the hotel where the president and 33 other leaders have gathered and are holding talks for the Summit of the Americas. Also well away from this hotel where the president and his delegation are staying. The pictures are dramatic, but there are no confirmed reports of significant injuries here, no indication of mass arrests. What we have here apparently are rock and firebomb throwing showing protesters fighting police who are responding with tear gas. The kind of protests that we've come to expect, anti-globalization protests that we've come to expect at these gatherings. The president's trade policies, not very popular here in Argentina, where some blame them for this country's economic collapse in the 1990s, global trade that is, and also the war in Iraq, very unpopular here. So the fight between the police and protesters coinciding with the start of this summit and following a very peaceful protest that involved about 10,000 people earlier today. John?
In Mar del Plata, Argentina, with the president as... Now, we're getting information that even though we're looking at those pictures of rioting and burning, that at this moment it's over and they're already beginning to clean up. Meantime, racist comments being hurled at minority persons who are conservatives. An author getting attacked with a pie. One columnist says it's proof that liberals are now out of control. She is Michelle Malkin, a Fox News contributor and author of the new book, Unhinged, Exposing Liberals Gone Wild, which, Michelle, I believe is somewhere in the like 9 or 10 on the Amazon nonfiction list, so congrats. It's doing well. So what do you mean by liberals gone wild?
Well, one thing I want to make clear is I'm not just talking about all liberals. I'm talking about a significant subset of the left that has completely lost touch with reality and has really taken that phrase, whatever it takes, literally. And I have a whole chapter, for example, called When Angry Democrats Attack. And this is what really fueled my passion to do the book, was covering a lot of these bizarre incidents during the 2004 campaign. Incidents that, if they were committed by Republicans, would have been all over the front pages of the New York Times. Things like liberals who were taking bayonets and chainsaws to campaign signs and ramming cars into Republican candidates who were simply peacefully campaigning for office. And I thought it was remarkable that the mainstream media seems to have whitewashed these because they do not fit the caricature of the right being the ones who are angry and intolerant and violence prone.
Can you explain why it is? Because I hate to say this, but I've had the same trouble. I'm getting attacked, me in my email, and because of my book, and I know you have, and O'Reilly has, and Ann Coulter has, and others have. But why is it that these liberals who say they stand for truth, justice, and the American way feel so free to say, you should die, I'm willing to do it myself? It's really violent and vicious stuff.
It is, and you know, I think it's helpful for us to open our bags and mailboxes and let people know just how hate-filled they can be. Now, certainly, a certain amount of that does come with the territory. Anybody who's in public life and combative, but I think there's something extra sanctimonious and hypocritical about the left, who do, you know, call themselves champions of tolerance and civility, to be using the kind of vile language that they do. And I did not whitewash it. My book is pretty much R-rated for the raunchy language.
Michelle, on the other hand, you know, what they say, I think, and I don't want to try to characterize what they say because they'll think I'm not doing a good job of it, is that Republicans and conservatives are the ones who are narrow-minded, who are, you know, who have taken over the government without an elected mandate, you know, the whole litany of stuff. And this is political discussion when elections are coming up soon and they're trying to mobilize their people, which, as you know from the last few elections, has been very difficult for them. So why not? What do you expect but a tumultuous political discussion?
Well, there's a difference between tumultuous, hand-to-hand combat that's passionate and maybe even a bit angry. Okay, that's fine, but we're talking about over the line. We're talking about cases, for example, where the #2 Senate Democratic leader, Dick Durbin, is likening troops at Guantanamo Bay to Pol Pot and Soviets in the gulags. And I did try to find examples where Democrats stood up to that. And in that case, it was a Democrat, Richard Daley, the mayor of Chicago, who said, Dick Durbin, you better apologize. And he did, even though it was weasel worded. And we need more Richard Daleys to stand up, because that change is only going to come from within. My book is sort of an intervention, but it's really only going to help facilitate it. You know, they're really going to have to help themselves.
Michelle Malkin, the book is Unhinged, Exposing Liberals Gone Wild. I'm looking at the Amazon website. It is number 8 on the nonfiction list right now. Michelle, thanks a lot. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you, John.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, there's a manhunt in Texas. That's the guy, Charles V. Thompson, a killer. He escaped. He's on the loose. They're looking for him. Obviously, he's dangerous. Jane Skinner's got a report on this situation when we come back.
I love this one. This man finally popped the question. You like it?
Oh, it's so beautiful.
But his Visa card was over the limit.
I'm so sorry. There seems to be a problem.
His fiancée told him to call American Express.
Okay, this one's so cool. A Gold Card member wanted a special gift for his wife's birthday.
No.
So I got him tickets through Gold Card events for the concert of the year before they went on sale.
Got him.
Call 1-800-THE-CARD and apply now for the Preferred Rewards Gold Card.
I helped a card member redeem points to get into the Richard Petty driving experience. She said she always wanted to live life in the fast lane.
With the American Express Preferred Rewards Gold Card, you get all this and more. Call 1-800-THE-CARD and apply now and experience a world of service.
Crash.
I just had a gun pointed in my face.
What did you do?
You think you know who you are. You have no idea.
Find me a witness.
You had a conversation with God, huh? What did God say?
Crash.
Something else, Winnie? People, man. People.
Are you a stress eater? Millions of people are. Hi, I'm Dr. Sean Talbot. University research shows us that overeating may be the result of everyday stress. The culprit is cortisol, a stress hormone that causes cravings for foods high in fat and carbs. That's why I developed Cortislim. Cortislim helps you manage stress so you feel relaxed and in control. If you suffer from stress-induced overeating, managing stress along with diet and exercise may be the missing piece of the puzzle. If you've been waiting to try Cortislim, your wait is over. I'm so confident that you'll love Cortislim that for the first time ever, I'm inviting you to try Cortislim absolutely free. Don't let stress weigh you down. Order Cortislim now.
We're so confident that you'll love Cortislim, we're making Cortislim available to try absolutely free. That's right. Call now and we'll send you your free Cortislim. Just pay shipping and handling. Don't wait another minute. Imagine what Cortislim can do for you. Be part of television history. Free Cortislim. Call now, 1-800-916-8183. That's 1-800-916-8183.
Homeowners need cash? You need to know about the no closing cost home equity line of credit from Countrywide Home Loans. Unlike many lenders, with Countrywide there's no application fee, no credit reporting fee, no appraisal fee, no underwriting fee, no closing costs. So you can use more of your loan to pay off credit cards and lower your bills. The no closing cost home equity line of credit from Countrywide. No one can do what Countrywide can. Apply now. Call 1-800-641-8260.
And death row inmate is on the loose after escaping from the Harris County Jail in Texas. It was not just any escape. He actually just walked right out of the place. Charles Victor Thompson was sentenced to die for the 1998 murders of his ex-girlfriend and her boyfriend. Even before he went on trial for that, he was charged with trying to hire hitmen to kill people who planned to testify against him. Jane Skinner joins me now with the story on the search for the killer.
Yeah,
Hi, Jane.
It's pretty incredible, John. At this point, they don't have many leads on exactly where this guy is. But the first question, of course, everybody's asking is, how in the world did it happen? As you said, he somehow got out of his handcuffs. He was in this county jail facility. He changed out of his orange jumpsuit. He walked out of the place in civilian clothes. This is Charles Victor Thompson, this convicted murderer, as you said, a guy who was on death row. He wasn't being held in a death row facility, not that secure. He's being held in a county jail until he was transferred. He had just been resentenced to death on Friday. He also flashed this fake ID, which is of some concern. He told the guards there that he was with the Attorney General's office in the state of Texas, flashed something that looked akin to a real ID. They let him go. The Sheriff's Department this afternoon held a news conference saying this was 100% human error, that this guy encountered deputies at least 3 places inside this facility, which is a pretty new facility and considered to be pretty secure. So now, of course, you can imagine they're going back interviewing everybody who had contact with him, inmates as well as officials who work within that facility there. The second question after how in the world did this happen, of course, is how dangerous is this guy? You mentioned he had been accused of having this hit list, that he was targeting people who were scheduled to testify against him in the murder trial. The family of these victims had said today, we're getting out of here. They fled. They left their homes fearing for their lives. His attorney, though, Thompson's attorney, saying today, I don't think he was out to get anybody. I don't think he's dangerous at all. As we said, though, no leads at this point, John, at least no public leads that police are talking about. They are still looking for Charles Victor Thompson. By most accounts, would be considered pretty dangerous.
All right, Jane Skinner, thanks a lot. People keep an eye out for him. Thanks, Jane. Coming up, your word.
Finger and toe area fungal infections require strong medicine. As a pharmacist, I recommend FungiCure.
FungiCure liquid eliminates fungus around nails with powerful antifungal medicine. Just brush it on. It's clear and dries in a snap. FungiCure, the finger and toe fungi specialist.
Hypocrite. Don't let that one little word stop you from talking to your kid about pot because once upon a time you smoked pot. Be the parent. Talk to your kid and tell him it's not okay.
With Vonage, I talk as much as I want and pay a lot less. It's just $24.99 a month, and that includes voicemail, caller ID, 3-way calling, and a lot more. The voice quality's great, and I even get to keep my same phone and phone number. I've had Vonage for 4 months. Should have gotten it a long time ago.
We're not out to change the world, just the way you talk to it. Sign up now and get your first month free. Call 1-800-939-4VON. High-speed internet connection required.
Get the most out of your home entertainment with a Dell Dimension desktop with an Intel Pentium 4 processor with HT technology. It's yours for only $699. Plus, get a free flat panel upgrade. And right now, other Dell desktops start at $399. It's more than just a home entertainment system, it's a Dell. Dell PCs use Intel Pentium 4 processors with HT technology.
Merry Christmas, Grandma and Grandpa!
But it's August.
I use my credit card miles. They blacked out the good weeks. While we're at it, happy Thanksgiving. Dibs on the drumstick, old man. Oh, and happy birthdays.
Yippee.
Put your Halloween costumes on while Mommy hides Easter eggs. Hey, you're looking good. Gonna cook that?
For easy-to-use rewards, get a Capital One no-hassle rewards card and fly any airline anytime with no blackout dates.
Are we having fun now or what?
Genius needs a Capital One card.
Dad, I'm hot. Yeah, we're all hot.
Apply now and earn up to 20,000 bonus miles. Just visit CapitalOne.com/card or call 1-800-290-3700.
Is it that late already? Happy New Year!
So fly any airline anytime with a Capital One no-hassle rewards card. Apply today and start earning up to 20,000 bonus miles. Just visit CapitalOne.com/card or call 1-800-290-3700.
What's in your wallet?
Now it is time for your word. People who write to us at myword@foxnews.com. The Democrat bloggers fomented a huge amount of email on my word in which I said Bush lied equals Saddam should still be in power. But some people agreed with me, like Michael Duvall in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, who does seem to agree. He said if Bush had not invaded Iraq, we would still have to enforce the no-fly zone. We would still be supporting thousands of U.S. troops to contain Saddam. He would still be making billions off the oil for weapons food program. He would still be undermining the UN through bribe, subterfuge, and he would still be working to develop or obtain WMDs. Right now, we know Saddam is not going anywhere. John Duffy writes, those who state that this war was wrong and illegal have such a hard time remembering that the legality of the war was there the first time Saddam's army shot at one of our planes patrolling the no-fly zones. That happened countless times during the Clinton administration, and nothing was done. Here's one of those who disagrees with me, Lance Hyatt in Charleston, South Carolina. Now that a tyrant has been brought down, should we put him back? No. The bigger question is, would we have gone to war just to bring him down without a direct threat of WMDs to our homes and families? Again, I think the answer is no. And then there is this from Laura in Colorado. I'm really curious why the liberals aren't apologizing for lying to us, too. They all stated as fact at one time or another that in the last 10 or so years, Iraq had WMDs. Why is Bush the only one getting called a liar when they were all saying the same things and before he was saying it? And this from Ricky Sims. I think you give the left too much credit. I suspect the Free Saddam movement is not far behind the Bush lied movement. And that is your word. Write to me and my word at foxnews.com. Don't forget, when you go to the mall this weekend, check out the bookstores. It's time for a plug. Look for my book, The War on Christmas. Yes, I know, it's a plug. War on Christmas is still in the top 20 on Amazon's nonfiction list. So when you go in the stores, check it out. Coming up next, special report with Britt Hume. Jim Engel's sitting in. Lots of stuff from down in Argentina. As you know, there's some rioting going on there. Here's Jim.